Within labor, however, not everyone agreed with the Shanker-Kirkland tough liberalism approach. So part two of the story is that Shanker and his like-minded colleagues faced a huge defeat in 1995 when the AFL-CIO voted to oust Lane Kirkland and his successor, Tom Donahue. Now, in the press, the rise of John Sweeney was all about better organizing, better communication, reviving the labor movement. And Al Shanker supported all these things and argued that Tom Donahue was excellent on those issues and would do a better job of accomplishing all those goals. So in a sense, the real ideological fervor behind the Sweeney's rise came instead from those who opposed the AFL-CIO's strong international role and its relatively hawkish foreign policy. So anti-war folks from the 1960s, opponents of U.S. policy in Central America, pushed hard for the idea that the AFL-CIO needed to, quote, come home. And true to their word, the new regime has diverted money away from the old internationalist agenda. And its remaining international attention is focused almost entirely on the issue of trade rather than democracy promotion. The AFL's distinctive voice for a robust U.S. foreign policy has been stilled. Moreover, the new Change to Win coalition has gone even further and been willing, certain members have been willing to work with state-run sham unions in China, something that Al Shanker very strongly opposed. Now, the disastrous execution of the war in Iraq by the Bush administration only strengthens the hand of isolationists within the labor movement and the Democratic Party. To steal a line from Herb Magidson, George Bush has done for democracy promotion what Joseph McCarthy did for anti-communism. I think it's impossible to know exactly what Al Shanker would have thought about the Iraq War, but I do know that to the extent that the war was meant to spread democracy in the Middle East, the Bush administration has done very little of the hard work required to attain that goal. Had the Bush administration been serious about promoting democracy, there would have been more planning for the building of democratic institutions prior to the invasion. Likewise, a committed promoter of liberal democracy would not tolerate a culture in which prisoners were abused in Abu Ghraib or denied basic rights at Guantanamo Bay. Because democracy promotion requires, at a minimum, leading by example. Shanker often observed that democracy promotion required far more than voting. It required the creation and strengthening of independent political parties, religious institutions, trade unions, newspapers, and free universities. This would all require generations to build, Al Shanker argued, which is why he started at the AFT a program to help emerging democracies build teacher unions and help those teacher unions transform the schools. Let me conclude with point number 3, the lessons for today. And I would cite 3 lessons. First, I think labor needs to be engaged in more than the self-interested issues of trade and make promoting of democracy and free trade unions abroad a central concern. It's the right thing to do, but it also answers the charge that labor unions are just another special interest group, like big oil or big tobacco. As Bill Dine points out in his new book, there's a great story to tell about the role of the organized labor played in winning the Cold War, and there are important analogs in the face of new authoritarian threats today. Secondly, I think Democrats need to reconnect with the proud tradition of Cold War liberalism for which Shanker fought, adapted to these new threats to freedom and democracy. Shanker used to say the Constitution provided for both the common defense and the general welfare, and he wanted the Democrats to be strongly for both. With a military hero in John McCain heading up the Republican Party, Democrats, I think, need to take special steps to address what Will mentioned, the national security confidence gap, which has shrunk but has not been eliminated by the Iraq War. I think Democrats need to make clear that they understand the reality of evil and to be passionate about fighting new forms of totalitarianism. As Will mentioned, this is going to be key to winning over the white working class vote, which the Wall Street Journal yesterday on the front page identified as the crucial swing vote. Third and final lesson, I think, is that labor needs to rediscover, and the Democrats need to rediscover the idealistic connection between foreign policy and domestic policy. Running against an ill-fated war by itself does not tell us what Democrats are for in foreign policy. So I would like to see a Democratic candidate who can reclaim the idea of democracy propulsion from George Bush, and unlike Bush, actually practice it. Someone who gets as animated about the idea of spreading democracy abroad as he or she rightly does about promoting equal opportunity and social mobility at home. Al Shanker's tough liberalism, which combined economic populism, colorblind policy, and a strong and credible national security policy, responds to the central critique of American liberalism from white working class people, which is that liberalism is seen as elitist and soft and doesn't understand the way that the world really works. But beyond winning elections, I think Al Shanker's coherent vision of economic and political democracy would give Democrats a grand and noble overarching framework to guide both domestic and foreign policy once elected.